Here on this beautiful afternoon, and thank you to Greenpeace for the opportunity to come together for such a wonderful cause. Thank you to Bonnie for being the catalyst. We can clap. My name is Amy Fraser. I'm the founder of OK Real, and it's a pleasure to be here today with such a brilliant lineup of speakers. So I'm here with Bonnie Wright, with Lauren Singer, Anna Cumming, Kate Malgers, and we're going to chat for about 40 minutes or so, then open it up to questions, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kate, who is going to talk a little more about the ship and activities post-picnic. So to kick us all off, I would love for each of you ladies to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do, and also what led you to care so much about the environment that you have turned it into a career. So Bonnie, do you want to get us going?
Thank you, Amy. I guess so. In terms of environment, I guess it's not quite my career, but it's definitely become a huge part of my life, and it really stems, I guess, from my appreciation of having time and having the luxury to spend quality time in predominantly the water, the ocean, and just coastlines in general. It's always been a space that I've gained a lot of inspiration for my film work, and it's always been a space that I feel like I've been able to take a lot from, and I've seen firsthand how that kind of taking and disrespect has caused such devastation to our waters, and I kind of wanted to work out how I could give back to something that had given me a lot, and I started my sort of work and relationship with Greenpeace on the East Coast ship tour. So obviously it's now on its West Coast ship tour. I don't know if people have seen it, but it's the Arctic sunrise is just over there. And I went on the ship in, was it October, November of last year? No, September, I don't know. A month last year. So we, just to meet all of the campaigners and to really understand like what a Greenpeace ship does and what sort of information were they collecting on that trip. Most particularly was trawling for microplastics, in which we use the Five Gyres nets. And to me, you think the water looks so beautiful and you think, what's wrong with it? It looks lovely. It's glistening in the sun, and you realize below those layers there's tiny pieces of broken up plastic that have ended up there. It really just began there, my journey with that. And I think with plastic, like we've all made choices today imaginatively and creatively around plastic, single-use plastic packaging. And although it probably took us a little bit longer than our usual like quick grabbing of food, it probably made you realize that these choices can be made and things can be avoided. So I'm really behind this movement in reducing our use of single-use plastic, because I really do think that the choices we make will make a difference, and like already just showing up here today, you've made a difference in what you're eating for lunch. So that's a bit about my plastic background.
I'm Lauren Singer, and I'm really happy to be here. I'm like crying, look at everyone's like picnics, they're so pretty, and really happy to be in LA, so thank you, Bonnie. I started a blog called Trashes for Tossers about, I guess now almost 6 years ago, which is aimed at helping individuals find simple ways to reduce plastic and waste in their everyday lives. And the reason for that is I studied environmental science and really cared about the environment, really cared about sustainability, but I realized that there was a misalignment between what I cared about and the way that I was living my everyday life. I really cared about sustainability, I talked about it, I studied it, but then when I looked at my own home when I was still in college, all of my clothes were synthetic, all of my food was packaged in plastic, all of my beauty products had microplastics in them, and it was just unbelievable that I could be so passionate about something but live my life in a completely opposite way, which is how I got interested in living a zero-waste lifestyle in the first place. And most recently, I started a company called Package Free Shop, which was kind of a byproduct of reducing my waste and living a zero waste lifestyle, because there are so many things that helped me on my way to reducing my trash, like different tools like sporks and stainless steel containers, but I found that they were really inconvenient to find. And so Package Free was kind of this way that I could bring together all of these really amazing brands that are creating products that help people reduce waste, and make it really easy for any individual who wants to reduce their waste to find all of these products. So that's what I've been up to for the past I guess year now, and it's been really amazing because our work, even just straws alone, we've helped eliminate, through the purchases of amazing customers, over 8 million plastic straws from going to landfill, and that's just like one product. So kind of echoing Bonnie, it really is possible for people to take responsibility for the state of the world, and our actions as individuals make up this reality that we live in. So by doing simple things, we really help to have such a positive impact.
Hi everybody, thank you all so much for coming. It's so great to see so many folks here with plastic-free picnics. So huge congrats to you all for being able to get food and bring it here without plastic. That's a really great thing to do, and actually quite hard to do as well. So congratulations on that. My name is Kate Melgis. I am an ocean plastics campaigner for Greenpeace US. I've been with Greenpeace for about 7 years. I was very fortunate to grow up in Florida near the beach, so spent most of my summers and any free time out on the water playing in the sands, and that really kind of instilled my love for the environment and for the ocean. And it's just always been a dream of mine to work for an organization where I'm fortunate enough to protect and fight for the planet, which I feel very lucky to be able to do that. And yeah, I just want to make sure that there is a place for my niece and my nephew and my future children and my cousins to grow up, and that we leave the planet in a better place than we found it. So that's why I work for the environment.
Cheers to that. Hello everyone, my name is Anna Cummins. I'm the co-founder of an organization called 5 Gyres. I'll explain more what that is, but I'm so thrilled to look out and see so many young people here. So I want a round of applause for the young people in the audience. My journey started young as well, like Kate, and I think like everyone here, I grew up loving the outdoors and the beach and the local creek, which is actually urban runoff by my house, but it was my version of nature. But my first inkling about kind of our daily choices and the environment started when I decided to stop eating meat, and I was doing a little rebellious thing because my parents didn't think I could do it. They were so worried about my health that I started arming myself with knowledge, reading books, and starting to discover the connections between our food choices, water consumption, fossil fuels, all these things. So that was the first moment I realized the small things we do have impacts out in the world that we may never see, but that are still profound. My plastic journey began when I heard a local activist, Captain Charles Moore, who's based here in Long Beach. I heard him give a lecture, and it changed my life. He talked about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the Texas-sized island, which we can do some myth busting later, but I was shocked that no one was talking about this in 2001. So I stalked him a bit. I eventually got invited on one of his trips, and that clinched it for me. Going on a research trip to Guadalupe, seeing firsthand all these birds filled with plastic in their stomachs, and then recounting the experience to my mom while in line at Pete's Coffee on Montana Avenue in Santa Monica, watching a parade of disposables leaving the shop, and realizing in that moment, it's us. It comes from here, and it's winding out there. So I think that's how the whole journey began, and we'll get more into that.
Thank you all. So, okay, Bonnie, I know that single-use plastic is a huge focus or a huge pet peeve of yours. Why? And what inspired you to create this event?
So I guess I was inspired to create the event because when I was, always my interest in sort of creating my own sort of campaigns or getting behind things as fundraising as a kid really stemmed from coming together. Like when I was younger, I used to send away for these packages you could get in the mail they would come in these little boxes, and they would be these toolkits on how to sort of make your own fundraising event, whether it was like a bake sale or different things. And it was very much something that I loved doing as a kid, and I always think, we never really get together, like we can all share different things online, which is incredible about social media and different things, but to actually have a physical space to all be here and see things physically, the choices we're making, and this plastic is a physical, tangible thing that I really do believe, like I said before, we can sort of eliminate or rely less on. And so I was just really intrigued to see as a challenge to myself if we could all do this together, which clearly we have, so that's cool. And I wanted this to be an event that, you know, maybe you take home and share with friends at home, or try and do like your own version, like maybe in your classroom at school, or with your friends, you know, over at your house on the living room floor, or anything. I think the beauty of reducing what I've learned personally from really trying to eliminate single-use plastics in my home is that it suddenly just creates a sort of attitude towards everything. I think it's a sort of a new sort of mindfulness in terms of just how you consume everything, and it begins to stem, you know, through to, you know, even just your food waste, or maybe like cleaning products you go through, or beauty products you go through. I think it just makes you stop a minute and realize, am I just grabbing that because it's convenient, or am I thinking beyond like the life cycle of my interaction with that product? I think we're in a time where everything is quite linear, like it's the cause and effect in that circular society doesn't really sort of exist, and I think it's definitely coming back. But I think we shouldn't be too entitled to think that we pick something up and we put it in the waste bin and we never have to think about like what happened. It's like a kind of magical Mary Poppins bag, and everything like goes in there and disappears. It's going somewhere. And yeah, so I think I've so focused on single-use plastics because I found it a very direct and clear and clean dialogue to have with people. And for me, it's opened up many different sort of worlds within just consumption. And I think it's hard. People often will be like, oh, well, you know, we live in a consumer society. We don't control what's in our, you know, grocery stores. And I think actually, if we are in this sort of consumer society, doesn't that mean that we as the consumer actually do have the power? Because if we make these different choices and we start moving away from goods packaged in plastic, that we become data quite quickly by what we choose to buy. And you know, these big corporations will realize that, wait, why are people not buying like our plastic bottled soda anymore? And they'll have to catch up. So I think we do just have to step into that power as the consumer, even in a topic that can be very, very overwhelming. I'm like constantly overwhelmed by it all the time. And I think you've got to choose your battles, like just decide one thing at a time. Don't try and like eliminate everything at once. It's very overwhelming. So yeah, that's why I'm all about single-use plastics.
So what I'm hearing is that we all have a sense, or we all have a responsibility, is the kind of message. Kate, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about what that responsibility is on behalf of Greenpeace. What do we need to do? What do we need to change in order to improve the health of our oceans and our environment?
That is a great question. So we at Greenpeace are focused on challenging corporations to fundamentally rethink and redesign the way that they package products. So food, personal care, home care, cleaning supplies, all that stuff, like really take a look at it and redesign the way that it's being delivered to us. Because there's a lot that we can do in our lives, like avoiding single-use plastic items as much as we can, but you go to the store and there's still so much stuff wrapped in plastic. It's quite hard to find produce that's not wrapped in plastic, and let alone getting cleaning supplies or beauty products or drinks or anything like that. Fast food is very, very hard to get it not in single-use plastic. So I think it's on us to do as much as we can in our personal lives, but also challenge these companies. So like Coke, Nestle, Pepsi, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, Johnson & Johnson, McDonald's, Starbucks, like any possible company or store or fast food chain you can think of. It's up to us to challenge them and really put pressure on them to phase out single-use plastics and rethink the way that they are packaging and delivering goods to us. And it's quite hard for those companies to imagine what that looks like. A lot of the answers aren't out there just yet, but they have millions and millions of dollars and have big research research funds, and they can put their scientists and their staff behind it to find sustainable alternatives to single-use plastic and look to more systems of reuse.
So Anna, you've done a fair bit of travelling across the oceans, to the fair shores of New Zealand even, collecting data on microplastic pollution. Can you tell us what that means or what that entails technically, and what effect that has on the environment? What is the plastic doing to the oceans and the water?
So to answer that question, I want to start by defining what is a gyre. Our organization's called 5 Gyres. A gyre is a natural phenomenon, so it's just the spinning of the earth coupled with winds and currents that creates these huge, like a huge vortex in the ocean. So all of the floating plastics that we all see, anything we might see here in our communities, the forks, the bottles, the bags, the straws, everything eventually marches its way to the ocean through rivers, through storm drains, and through rain. Once it gets out to sea, to give you an idea of scope, in the North Pacific Ocean, the North Pacific Gyre, if you were to chuck a lighter out in the water, which of course we wouldn't do, in 6 to 10 years, it would have traveled from California all the way out to Japan and back, endlessly circulating around. And because it is fossil fuel based, it's not biodegradable, but it is photodegradable. So UV light, sunlight will make it brittle, waves and hurricanes will turn it down to these fine particles. And I just so happen to have a sample because I almost always carry one. I'll pass this around. So this is a sample from the middle of the Pacific, about as far from land as you can get anywhere in the world. And what we do, I'll pass this around, is we take a traditional, like a plankton net that skims the surface. We call it the manta trawl. And we're able to collect microplastics down to 1/3 of a millimeter. We're also collecting life, though. And what we see in the ocean really speaks to the fact that the solutions are upstream, that we cannot skim the entire surface of our water planet, because as we all know, our planet is mostly ocean. And when we take these samples, we get a small handful for every maybe 1 to 2 nautical miles of ocean, but we also get a lot of life. Zooplankton and krill and tiny creatures. So that again is why it would be impractical and not feasible to try and skim the entire surface of the oceans to clean up all this plastics. The solutions have to start on land. So what impact does all this plastic have? Well, I think you all are here today because you have concerns. You've probably seen photos that show some of the impacts on marine wildlife. So animals either ingest plastics, mistaking it for food, or they get entangled in it. And there are awful, awful photos all over the internet. I think a lot of the global momentum right now around straws really stemmed in part from that one viral photo of the turtle. But I also want to point out that it's not just animals and marine ecosystems, that we are a part of the environment. We are a critical part of it. So it's our own health also that is under threat. I have a personal anecdote to show that, and that plastic in the ocean absorbs chemicals. Those chemicals can then transfer to the food chain. We're at the top of the food chain. And those chemicals can potentially work their way into our own bodies. I'm a mother. I have a 6-year-old. But before I got pregnant, I did a body burden test looking for trace levels of contaminants in my own blood serum and finding trace levels of PCBs, DDT, PFCs, and higher levels of flame retardants. That's not to say that these came to me from plastic, but that we know plastic is one way these chemicals get into the environment. The final point I want to make, though, about health is something that we're all very actively talking about, and that the health impacts, the implications of plastic pollution on people don't end with plastic and fish getting into the food chain. The much bigger impacts are further upstream, because we can't forget plastic is made from fossil fuels. The extraction of that oil to make plastic comes at a very heavy cost, and it's generally marginalized communities of color that suffer disproportionately from that. And right now, plastic is driving a huge planned increase in oil in this country, with over $180 billion being invested in ramping up the infrastructure of plastic extraction facilities to the tune, I think, of like 264 new plants. So I think I went a bit into the weeds, but the point here is that plastic is made from fossil fuels. It harms oceans, it harms animals, but it also harms the most vulnerable communities. And that's why aligning with our values and doing more, getting involved at a political level is so important.
Lauren, you've made a huge life shift. Eliminating single-use plastics is part of an overall lifestyle for you. I was familiar with your work prior, but I didn't know that all of your trash over the course of a year can fit into a single mason jar. Tell us a little bit about the challenges you faced, and I'm just so intrigued. How do you do that?
I started out, I guess one of the first things that I did was, before I learned about the concept of zero waste, I learned about the implications of plastic, and one of the biggest things that I learned about plastic was the negative effects that it could have on my own personal health. So a lot of this started with me and just a selfish desire to improve my own well-being and the well-being of those around me, like my mom and my siblings. I don't want them to fall victim to the contaminants that are so prevalent in plastic. So I started by saying no to single-use plastic water bottles and getting a plastic-free water filter. And then from there, I started looking around and was just like, oh my God, all of my beauty products are packaged in plastic. What do I do? And I would try to go to like a CVS or a Rite Aid looking for something that wasn't packaged in plastic. And if any of you have ever tried to do that, it's next to impossible to find anything, if not impossible. And I think that's the moment where I started getting into the concept of zero waste, because I realized that I couldn't just rely on this system that we live in to provide alternatives that are safe for our bodies and for the environment. So I started researching how to make my own products, and that's one of the biggest ways that I was able to eliminate my waste, is because I realized that was the only way at the time that I could get them. So I had to learn how to make my own toothpaste and my own deodorant and my own lotions and my own cleaning products and laundry detergent, because at the time there just wasn't anything available. But what I also learned was all of this stuff that society tells us we need to be healthy or beautiful or confident or whatever is just like a lie. We don't need any of it. We don't need to buy new clothes. Secondhand clothes are amazing. We don't need to buy like tons of makeup products. Like our own skin is beautiful. We don't need to buy junk food. It doesn't make us feel good. And so asking myself the question throughout this process, like, do I need this? Does this make me happy? Does this make me feel beautiful? Was actually like the biggest reward. And I think the most challenging thing wasn't the actual process of reducing my waste. Like, all of the solutions to eliminating plastic are really easy and really convenient, and actually like a lot more convenient than a lot of the non-zero waste things. The hardest thing was my own brain and the pressure of society telling me that I needed these things to be a better version of myself, but it's just not true. And I really have become so much more confident. Like, my weight has stabilized so much more, all because I've said no to packaged products. And what I realized was all of those products that society tells me that I need, actually, like, they're not good for me. Packaged food products, they're not food, they're food products, and they have preservatives. They don't actually provide nutrition to us, so we're still constantly hungry, which is why we overeat. Packaged beauty products very often are like not great for our skin. They have preservatives. They actually cause a lot of breakouts, and they don't address the root cause of like skincare and body care. So I think the hardest thing was just believing that that was true. So many people hear like, oh, natural products, and there's this like instantaneous preconception that they don't work. Has anyone experienced that? Like, oh, organic, it must not taste as good, or like natural beauty products, or like natural deodorant, it must not work. But like the truth is like there's like 100 deodorant brands, even in conventional deodorant, and like the reason for that is because everybody's body is different. So what works for one person might not work for another. So it's just trying different things. But I really think the hardest thing was just like believing that it was possible to live in a world outside of this world that everyone says we have to live in. And I think that's the strongest takeaway, is just because the world looks a certain way doesn't mean it's the way it has to be. And we have complete control and power over ourselves and our own lives to make decisions that don't have to align with the people around us. And sometimes that's hard, and you'll feel weird and isolated, and you'll feel uncomfortable asking for things in a different way. But ultimately, it's because this whole movement is very young and very new, and it's going to look weird to people. People are going to like scoff at you and think that you're strange or like call you a hippie or a liberal, but ultimately, like, I don't care. I love what I'm doing, and it makes me feel awesome that I'm aligning what I do with my values. And if I go forward with that and I don't worry about what other people think, which is really hard, then I just, like, it's so much better. Yeah, it's cool to be weird and to, like, not have plastic. You guys are so much cooler than everybody else. Just know that.
Barney, and I guess Kate, you can speak to this question also about your experience trawling for microplastics using 5 gyres aboard the Arctic Sunrise. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It was, my first experience. I mean, to explain how I kind of explain it is just imagining you've got like a fishing net, but rather than fishing for fish, you're fishing for plastic, but essentially is made of that kind of similar material. And I was so surprised when I was aboard the Arctic Sunrise, the same ship that's over here, speaking to all of the deckhands and crews and campaigners that had been on the ship for, at that point, maybe a month, 6 weeks or something. And there wasn't one time that they trawled and didn't bring up a form of plastic, which to me I found just like so shocking in that moment, because you're in this huge expanse of ocean, you see nothing but kind of maybe the odd ship in on the horizon, and you think, it was all glistening and beautiful, and to realize that at every depth and every level there is pollution. And I was just very overwhelmed by that experience as we picked through it with with tweezers and a microscope and trying to sort of put it out on this graphed piece of paper in order to sort of work out maybe what type of plastic each was, in order to sort of work out what that maybe as a product had stemmed from. So I just found the whole experience just really heartbreaking, just seeing just that 1 hour that we put the net down, how much we brought up each day. And I think it's always this hard thing where, do we spend all our efforts and focus trying to get all the plastic that's in our oceans out of the oceans? Is that even possible? Or do we turn the tap off of the plastic that's still continuing to be made? And as Anna said, even more so, you'd think that we're beginning to sort of shift these fashions, but actually more and more plastic is being made. So I just found in that moment, just in that really first-hand, being right out in the middle of the water, just experiencing that 1 hour of putting that net down, it just brought it really into perspective for me. I think I've always, we see the water as quite of an out of sight, out of mind experience, because it's just so vast. So in that moment, it all felt like very small and very real. And so I really thank Greenpeace for taking me on their ship as well, and for all the work that I've been doing with them. I've just loved working with all the different campaigners and how committed that they are to this cause. And I think I've really tried to focus on the plastics. I know, obviously, for Kate, it's a focus too, so I'll let you speak a bit more about it.
Yeah, not a whole lot else to add, because it's pretty heartbreaking. Like, the water out there looks amazing and it looks really nice, and I kind of want to go swimming, but but it, like, I think the first trawl that I did off the ship was with Bonnie. We left the Bahamas and we're sailing to Miami, and the water in the Bahamas is this amazing, like, crystal blue, beautiful color. And just sad, we found like little bits of fishing line, we found bits of plastic film that was probably like a wrapper of something of some sort, maybe came from a water bottle or was a bag one time. In New York we did it, we found a lot of styrofoam, little bits of straws. It was just really interesting how the plastic varied from location, and just again was really heartbreaking and really eye-opening for me to see water, which I love the ocean, I feel very, very connected to the ocean, and just what you think is clean and this pristine, beautiful thing is actually not, and there's just all this really sad plastic garbage just floating under the water, and really made me sad to think how small the pieces are and how fish probably confuse them for food. And yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking, but it is not to like end on a sad note, but it is great to see, like, it is becoming an issue that people are more and more aware of, and I really think that we're at a turning point where, like, we're just about over the hill, and like things are going to start getting better if people keep fighting and keep pushing and really challenging corporations to phase out single-use plastics.
So, Anna and Lauren, if we all take our glass cup to the cafe for our coffee, is that enough? You know, are these small actions enough? Can both of you speak to how we can leverage those small acts to larger ones and shift our lifestyle and our consciousness to better ways of living?
I think, obviously, just taking your cup, just doing these small things to eliminate plastic is not enough if we don't influence other people, inspire, share with our communities, whether it's your school, your neighborhood, your family. And I have one example that I love that really speaks to the power of youth. There's a school out in Silver Lake that we've worked with, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who decided they were going to take matters into their own hands and get rid of the styrofoam trays that they had for lunch every single day. So they did a little art project. They collected trays for a week. They strung them up from a tree in the middle of campus, and that definitely got the attention of the administration. And then they went ahead, they did not ask for permission, but they swapped out those trays with reusable ones. That one move saved their school $12,000. And for a public school, schools are constantly being cut with budgets. That got the attention of the entire district of LA Unified, which is the second largest school district in the country, second only to New York. So the entire district then said, okay, no more styrofoam trays. And so I think that that just really speaks to the ripple effect of change. So if we do that one little action, but maybe we talk to some people at the coffee shop, maybe we go the next level and we talk to the manager, we talk to the entire chain. And especially when young people do this, I've seen it time and time again, it's a lot harder to say no to a 7-year-old or a 13-year-old than it is to say no to an old person like myself. So, just kidding. So anyway, I guess the point is that whether you're someone who likes to write or speak out or maybe be more active on social media, if we make these changes but then champion them and find ways to make those changes go even bigger, you never know. You can change an entire district. Maybe you can change the world.
I want to speak on that point before I answer your question, just because I've been kind of in this dialogue around zero waste for a while now, and something that I see happening, which makes me a little sad, is sometimes when we feel passionate about things, we try to impose those feelings on other people out of goodness, out of a desire to make a positive impact or a positive change. But what I try to live my life by is you can't change other people, but you can inspire them to do differently. And one thing that makes me sad that I see, for instance, on my own social media is people trying to tell others how to be and how to live and what to do in a way that's almost demeaning to the person, but we are all exactly where we are. And we have to meet people where they're at and walk with them, not against them. So I find it very important. You're all obviously very interested in sustainability and waste reduction and eliminating plastic, but don't confuse that with being a martyr or proselytizing. Meet people where they're at and show them your life. Don't tell them why theirs is wrong. And I think that's a very important and very fine line to cross, because the moment you try to start telling someone what to do, they're going to stop listening to you. I don't know if anyone's ever had a conversation with a vegan, but there's nothing that makes me not want to be a vegan more than being told that I need to be a vegan. So if you're with someone who's maybe interested about what you're doing, talk to them. Tell them about the things that you do in your life, but don't tell them why what they do is wrong. So that's just like an anecdote that I'll share, because I know that's helped me a lot in my own conversations around sustainability. And I think it's one of the reasons why I'm able to communicate with people, especially like my mom. I used to try to tell her what to do and she never wanted to listen to me. But then the moment I was like, oh my gosh, like reducing plastic in my food made me skinnier. And she's like, what? So, you know, just like be an open book and don't judge. And I guess from the concept of does one person have an impact, or what can you do, or like what actually makes an impact, you know, of course, you know, doing these small things to reduce plastic is something, and the average American makes about 4.5 pounds of trash per person per day, so that's thousands of pounds over the course of a year. So of course reducing waste has a positive impact, and that's because landfills create methane, which can be upwards, I've heard, about 150 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, as a warming gas, which contributes to climate change far more than carbon dioxide. So by reducing our waste and our consumption of animals and our usage of fossil fuels, specifically natural gas, we can actually help to remediate the effects of climate change. But on top of that, something that I see, and like I said before, this is a really small community that's growing quickly. And when I graduated from college in environmental science, my two career paths were nonprofits and government, which neither was a good fit for me. And I realized that there was all of this opportunity in entrepreneurship. And I see in this world of waste reduction, there are so many things that don't exist yet. So if you want to do something and you're not sure what yet, or you're still in college, or you're, just figuring your life out, like you want to have an impact, but you're not sure what you can do, look at all the problems that exist and pick one. I started Package Free because there wasn't an easy way to find products that were without packaging or without plastic, and so that was my contribution and the way that I thought I could contribute. But there's so many products that don't exist yet that need to exist to make not using plastic more convenient for everyone. So I would explore, I'm all about starting your own business, and I think if you guys are interested in entrepreneurship, ask me about some products that I need at Package Free Shop, and I'll tell you, and you can make them, and then I can make you money. So and then we can all have a positive impact.
The clapping after everybody speaks. It's very encouraging. So to wrap us up before we get into questions from you guys, can each of you leave us with one takeaway? What is something that you would like everybody here to leave with? Whether that's something actionable or whether it's a message or some special effort that we can all take part in here.
Sure. Well, I through this work and through the work that I do most of my time, I love to tell stories. And for me, all of this is telling a story. We're sat here together telling a story about what we believe in and what we think we should change and what we should highlight. So I just really encourage you to tell the story of today to other people this week that you come into contact with, in a kind of, as you say, open and non-judgmental way. And moments, when you ask for maybe, could I have no straw, please? Or, could I fill my reusable coffee cup with my coffee? Use that opportunity to in a very short way, tell a story of why you're not, deciding to use that straw. And in that moment of interaction that you have with that person, if they listen to you, if they don't listen to you, if they ask a question back, you've had a moment of kind of telling a story to that person and sharing something. So whether or not it's just saying, could I use my reusable cup because I'm trying to eliminate, single-use, coffee cups, or just use that moment as a moment to tell a story to someone in a very kind of succinct, sweet way. And slowly, as you say that, you'll begin to find the language that you like to use when telling that story. I think, find how you like to share this, basically.
I totally agree with that. Like, when you tell someone why you don't want something, you're like, when you just say, I don't want plastic, they're like, oh, whatever. And they just kind of brush you away. But if you're like, I prefer not to use plastic because I really don't want to put straws in turtles' noses, they're like, oh my God, I know. Me too. So that tip is so good. Yeah. I guess I'll just echo what I said before. I think, if you believe something is important, it probably is. And even if everyone thinks you're weird or like a hippie or crazy, whatever, because you're trying to contribute to something positive, and stand by your values, live them, don't push them on other people. And if you live your best life aligning with your values and doing what you think is the most important to have a positive impact, then people will gravitate towards you, and you don't need to try to tell anyone to do anything. And I guess just for anyone starting out, people are going to look at you weird, but every time someone looks at you weird, just think of it as you showing them something that they've never seen before. So every weird look is a teachable moment. So you can say, oh, if you ask for something without a plastic bag, which in California I guess like is a less occurring thing, but in New York if someone gives me a weird look, it's like, oh, because plastic bags have a really negative impact on the environment. And I like love opportunities where people look at me weird, because it means I'm showing them something that they've never seen before. So don't be afraid of those weird looks. It makes you a teacher, and it gives you the opportunity to share an experience with someone that could possibly change the way they live their life. So yeah, look weird. It's awesome.
I want to encourage you all to challenge the places that you shop, the brands that you frequently purchase, to phase out single-use plastic. And if anyone here that has a cell phone, which I see a lot out, so if everyone could take their cell phones out and open up your text message fields, there is a way I'll tell you what to text, but you can actually send a petition to some of the largest supermarkets encouraging them to phase out all the unnecessary single-use plastic that they're using. So like, stop wrapping cucumbers in plastic, or cauliflower, or peeling oranges and then putting them in a plastic box. So if you type the words plastic free to 877-877, that'll send you another text message where you're able to sign this petition. So plastic free to 877-877. And if folks have questions afterwards about anything, I'm happy to answer them, but really, really want to encourage folks to talk to your local grocery store, call up if you buy products from Procter & Gamble or Nestle or any of them, call them up, write them a letter, and tell them to stop using so much single-use plastic.
The really hard thing about going last is that like most of the things have already been said. So I was like, oh, no, it's already been said. Since people have their phones out and kind of supporting what Kate was saying about corporate accountability, there is a great app called Literati that allows you to start tracking brands. And, I was going to say before, not everyone has the time or the opportunity to go cross an ocean and collect samples, but we all do have really simple tools that allow us to be citizen scientists. We have a report that's on our website, and I've got a couple copies here that we produced in collaboration with a whole bunch of partners, called the Ban List, Better Alternatives Now. And we combed through copious amounts of data to come up with a list of the top 20 worst offenders, products that have no place in a zero waste society, that should be either redesigned or eliminated completely. And we relied heavily on data from Greenpeace, from Literati, from NOAA, from lots of data sources out there. And kind of the idea and the trend right now is we need to get away from just doing beach cleanups or just blaming certain countries for leaking plastic, but really look at which corporations bear the lion's share of responsibility. So using Literati allows you to, anywhere in the world, do a beach cleanup just by photographing garbage, and then of course pick it up and throw it away. But it starts to recognize brands and types, and it starts to geo-target. So while you've got your phones out, if you want to be a citizen scientist, it's a great, easy tool. And then we use that data with our partners to come up with policy change.
So that wraps us up. If we could do one big round of applause for these lovely ladies and everything they've shared. Do we have any questions?